You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Hello, I'm Christy Landwehr.
And I'm Sarah Honegger, and you are listening to the special monthly NRHA episode of Horses in the Morning on the Horse Radio Network for this Thursday, August 10th.
Good morning, Horse World.
It's the second Thursday of the month. That means it's time to slide in to the National Reining Horse Association episode of Horses in the Morning.
Hi, Sarah. How are you today?
I'm good. How's it going in Colorado?
You know, it's going well, actually. We are so incredibly green. It's kind of freaking me out for this time of year. It's great.
That's awesome. We've been getting super flooded here too, actually, but you know, the 110s are back. So we're just sweating it out over here.
Well, Oklahoma has that, right? It sure does. It is part of the journey.
It is. It is. Well, so you just got back from an awesome trip in Costa Rica. I want all of our viewers to hear about the neat horse experience you had there.
Oh my gosh. So this was so neat. And it just shows you, you know, sometimes you have to bother your network and great things happen. So I met a wonderful gentleman named Victor Wolf at the American Quarter Horse Association convention. I go there every year as a professional horseman for them. I'm on their membership and marketing committee, some other things. And I met him literally in the breakfast buffet line.
Oh
and he was on one side of it, I was on the other, and we just started chit-chatting. And he is currently the chair of their international committee. So we were talking about where he lives in Costa Rica and his fabulous ranch. And I just said, well, one day it's on my bucket list to go there, and I'm going to bug you if that's okay. And my family of 4 is going to descend upon you. And he said, of course. And I did it. Yes. So I reached out to him on WhatsApp and I said, hey, Victor, I'm coming. Is this still okay? And he said, of course. And oh my goodness. So if I can just share for a second, 10,000 acres in a place right outside of San Juan on the coast, or San Jose, sorry. So if you fly in, that's where you end up, is 2 hours on the coast. It's a place called Chomes. It was 2 hours north of where we were in Jaco. And he raises Brahmas. So he's a cattle rancher. He raises sheep. He also has palm oil production, and he also has sugarcane. And he's so holistic in how he runs his ranch. All the silage left over from the production of the sugarcane and the palm oil goes to feeding the animals.
Wow, that is awesome.
It's a really amazing thing. And so the 4 of us, my 2 sons and my husband and I, got to go on a trail ride and be inside the sugarcane, be underneath the palm trees where the palm oil is produced, go up on the mountain and see the ranch and the ocean from up high. And for those that have never been to Costa Rica, it is really mountainous, not hilly. Mountainous. It's amazing, the mountains. So that was super fun. And then we came back and we had food that his wonderful lady that cooks the food for the family made for us. Sarita was her name. And we had this amazing prawns straight out of the ocean that morning, and amazing beef from his Brahmas, and plantains, rice and beans. I mean, it just went on and on. We were so spoiled.
Well, we're certainly lucky to have you on our podcast today, because if I were you, I just simply would not have left.
I know, he was so wonderful. And now he's like, well, if I ever come out and see you, what should we do? And I said, well, I hope you come to Futurity for the National Reining Horse Association in November so I can spoil you, because we do have food and all kinds of fun things that occur there, right? Because I don't know how else to do it. I mean, it's just phenomenal. What a neat experience.
High bar of hospitality right there.
It was awesome. So we have an event coming up in August that we're a part of with NRHA. Do you want to let our listeners know a little bit more about the Run for a Million and what that is?
Yeah, we're super excited to be there. We'll have a booth with NRHA, and it is just the neatest event. We had a qualifier in Arizona earlier this year for this special Run for a Million. And there were also qualifiers from the $100,000 shootout at last year's event in Las Vegas that qualified for this as well. But it is certainly one of the largest events in our industry. It pulls so many outside fans. And because of the structure of it, you know, with a $100,000 open shootout, with the cow horse competition involved, with the special $1 million competition for NRHA. It's kind of a good intro to reining event in the fact that the classes are small, they have great commentators, the energy is just out of this world. So it's a really good first event to come to if you're a fan, to just kind of see what it's all about and, feel the energy in the room, meet the biggest players in the industry, and see really legendary horsepower. All these riders that are competing for this $1 million, they are pulling out the very best horses for this. And there's no age cap. So you'll see some legends come back into the show pen, like past world champions or fraternity champions and world champions. And it is just awesome to see in person.
Well, I went for the first time last year, and for those that don't know, it's in Las Vegas at South Point Arena and Casino, and it is fantastic. I really did enjoy it, and we will have a booth there, so you can come and visit us and enjoy that space. And so hopefully some of you that are listening come. You can go ahead and find out more about it on their site. Just, go ahead and search for Run for a Million. It'll come up, but it would be great to see people there.
Absolutely. So if you're wanting to join us for a reining event that's in a fun location, mark your calendars. It's August 16th through the 19th. And we would love to get to interact with our friends that we've made through this podcast.
Now, today on the show, we are going to have some excitement. We are going to start to dive into the different maneuvers that are done in a reining pattern, so that those listening that might want to one day do reining on your own horses, or take a riding lesson from an NRHA pro near you, or actually start to compete in the show pen, we're going to try to bring a professional and a judge on each month to talk about the different maneuvers. So today, in this National Reining Horse Association episode, we're going to dive into a specific maneuver on the reining patterns of the large and fast circles and the small and slow circles, and what the lead change all involves. We're going to have NRHA professional Shane Brown on and NRHA judge Drake Johnson. So looking forward to that. Our guest Shane Brown has been working in the horse industry since his early teens. He is an NRHA Futurity and Derby finalist, an AQHA World Show finalist, and also with the Paint Horses, an APHA World Show champion. He's also been a qualifier for AQHA many times. And not only has he done these things nationally, but internationally, he has competed with USEF and FEI. Shane was the Rocky Mountain Reining Horse Association president for many years, and he's on our executive committee currently. He is an outstanding non-pro coach who cares about educating both the horse and the rider. Shane, we're so excited to have you on today. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Christy. I'm happy to be here.
So you and I go way back because you were in Colorado for many, many years, and I have watched you compete at the National Western Stock Show freestyle reining competition a lot. That has been a pleasure. That takes place in January here in Denver. Tell us a little bit about your journey from Colorado over to Texas.
We had owned our own place for several years. In fact, that place we were at, we had been there for almost 18 years. And we had the opportunity a little over a year ago. Tom and Mandy McCutcheon approached me and asked me to maybe come be able to bring some horses, still ride and show, but be able to be their breeding manager and run their breeding operation. And so in October, we moved to Aubrey, Texas, and started that journey. So big difference, but still very involved in showing and riding reining horses, and as you stated, involved with NRHA.
Talk about a diversity of things that you have done. It's awesome.
Well, we've been very fortunate to do a little bit of everything in this industry, from, as you mentioned, competing globally and getting to go to Europe and show horses. In my career, I went over there and trained for about 7 months in my early 20s. All those things were a great experience. Was lucky enough to get to be an assistant and grow up in this industry. So started when I was very young. Hung my shingle out when I was very young. Have always really enjoyed coaching people. And so that's been a very fulfilling part of my career. I've been lucky enough to make it the open finals at the fraternity. And then to move on to learning this aspect of the breeding industry. We've done a little bit of everything and enjoyed all of it.
Shane, that's so awesome. And I'm so glad, we get to share all the different pieces of this industry just that you've been involved with alone on this podcast. The focus of this one specifically is about the circles and that piece of our reining pattern. So could you share a little bit with people when you're training a horse on how to do these fast and slow circles and that lead change? What are the first steps if someone's at home and wanting to kind of get this piece of a reining pattern down?
Well, there's a lot of ways to do this. Thank goodness our horses are very forgiving and they allow us to get it figured out. The other thing, and one of the reasons that reining is so successful, I believe, is this industry really believes in paying it forward and helping each other out. Mm-hmm. Our trainers are willing to help each other. You cannot show up to the horse show and say, I need some help, and not have everybody within earshot want to help you and tell you what to do.
So true.
That has made our sport move faster and improve itself so much more than it would have if we were keeping our cards close to our vest and not helping each other out. Mm-hmm. And so with there's a lot of ways to do it. So this is kind of how I do it. In my opinion, doesn't mean it's the only way to do it. Mm-hmm. The most important thing is gaining body control, is my opinion, because body control is going to make your guidance. And you've got to have a very willfully guided horse in these circles, both large and fast and small and slow. And so we've got true control of their shoulders, their rib cage, and their hips, and of course their head and neck individually. Then that's going to make our guidance in that circle much better. It's going to make their shoulders be stood up and them stay like they're running on a rail versus leaning that shoulder in or letting their hip fall out, or vice versa. I would say the shoulder leaning in is a more what we see as our major problem in our guidance of those circles. And so to work on that, I'm going to work on gaining control of that, both with my hands and my reins, being able to pick that horse up and move them out if they're leaning in, and also with my inside leg, being able to move those shoulders out. But also I don't want to get just too caught up in that one problem. And I think that's something we do, is we get so concerned about that shoulder leaning over. That's all we can feel when we ride around, and we over worry about it. And so one of the things that I actually learned from a dressage trainer several years ago, because I had a horse that was very intelligent and he was really good at home where I could fix him. But when I'd go to the horse show in his right circles, he would still lean over. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things was envisioning, instead of a circle being a continuous arc, and I think that's how most of us look at it, as a circle is a continuous arc, look at it as a series of redirected straight lines. So in other words, you're going to go forward for just a stride or two and then steer, forward a stride or two on a straight line and then steer. By just having that approach allowed me to keep my horse more stood up. And I feel like by having two different solutions to a horse that leans over, we can guide them out, we can push that shoulder out, and we can go around with a series of redirected straight lines. It just is another way to approach it. And some horses respond to that better.
Can I just jump in here and just say, as a riding instructor myself, I love that concept that dressage coach taught you, Shane, because you're right. We always see it as just an arc and we just teach it as a continuous maneuver, but that's not necessarily true. And right. Being able to do it with those two, strides and then readjust, I think that's really cool.
Right. And so another mental way for us to approach solving that problem. And so once we figure out what works best for our horse, whether it's guiding them out with our inside leg and pushing that shoulder out, or our hands, or thinking about straight lines, but once we start getting that shoulder fixed, then the other end of the fixing it is worrying about our hips. And I think that's another important lesson for us to learn, is always ask ourselves, what's the other end of our problem? If our shoulder's dropping in, what's going on with the hips? Because sometimes our hip is actually what's causing our shoulder to drop over, or vice versa. Mm-hmm. And if we get to where we can't see the forest for the trees, and all we're doing is trying to fix that shoulder, it's never going to solidly fix. We're always going to be battling with it, especially if our problem is actually that they're pushing their hip out or excessively in, one or the other. It's not following where it's supposed to be. We've got to have some hip control to put it where it belongs. And never say never, because there's always an exception to every rule. But it is extremely hard for a horse to lean their shoulder into the circle and have their hip inside also. Almost impossible. And so if we can keep that hip a little inside that circle, chances of them dropping their shoulder over is much less. So if I can work on that all the way in the basics of teaching a horse turn on the forehand, so my outside leg being underneath me can push that hip around, then as I'm loping that circle, if I've got my inside leg on a little bit supporting that shoulder, my outside leg can ask that hip to move into the inside of the circle and do a haunches in. And that will, in other words, prop that horse to where they can't drop their shoulder over. And sometimes in my education of going into that small slow, I'll actually push that hip in and make that guide first and keep them from dropping that shoulder into that small slow as well when I make that transition.
Well, that makes perfect sense. And when you break it down step by step, it's just so much easier for someone's brain, I think, that doesn't live and breathe this every day, just to have those little steps to achieve it, I think is super helpful. You know,
well, that's what we hope is 40 years of doing this, figuring it out with the blind leading the blind some. Hopefully our experience of trying it over and over and learning a few things, we can speed it up for those that are younger than us or just starting in this sport.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, another huge part of these maneuvers, obviously, is the lead change. I know, as you know, I come from a rodeo background. And when I was training my colt, I can't tell you how many NRHA professionals I called because I could not get this thing to change a lead. I thought I was pretty horse savvy, and I definitely needed to call a phone a friend situation to help me through it.
Right.
But what about that part of the maneuver? What could you kind of, for lack of a better word, lead?
Right. So with that, the next thing, even in as we just progress through our circles, this is going to connect to our slowdown and our lead change. We're going to have collection, because as a horse runs a fast circle, the faster they go, the more their body's going to be strung out and uncollected. The collected horse is pushed together into a compact mass. And so to slow them down, we want to have the ability to drive them together. And so that's another way to approach a slowdown, is thinking about driving them into a compact mass, which will shorten their stride, which is going to slow them down. And so to come around to that slowdown and ask a horse to collect, as a result, they slow down. And so it's changing our paradigm from just coming around there and trying to make that horse slow down. And we've all been around horses long enough to know sometimes when you try to make them do something, they're like a little kid. They're going to do the exact opposite. And so if we can come around again and have another tool in our toolbox, it's not just working on the brake pedal about slowing down, but educating them and teaching them how to drive into a compact mass, it's going to help our slowdown. Then the same thing. I've got to have that horse driven together and collected for my lead change. And so really there's three things that make up a lead change when you want to make it simple. We got to have control of our shoulders to prepare our horse for the lead change. So in other words, if we're changing from a right lead into a left lead, all of us know that we've got to get our hips swung over there to the left to get it changed. But sometimes it really helps us if we will do a little preparation, move my shoulder inside the circle, clear it out of the road so that when I ask that hip to move over, everything's clear and easy. All that hip's got to do is swing a little to the left and step forward, and there's where your lead change happens. If the horse is collected. For them to truly be collected, they're going to be driving with their hocks, and they're going to be soft and giving in their chin. So they can't spring apart and not get that lead changed. All we're asking them to do is we're manipulating their body parts so that they have to catch their balance. And the result of them catching their balance in that new direction is they change leads. So that makes it sound very simple. And really, it should be. The lead change is something that a lot of us have a hard time with. We get a phobia about it sometimes. And that shouldn't be necessary if we just break it down into the pieces and parts. I have to have body control and collection. If I don't have the ability to move my shoulders and my hips and keep this horse collected through this maneuver, I don't need to be worrying about practicing lead changes until I have those individual parts ready to go. The next thing about changing leads is I think it's very important, if you don't remember anything from this talk, but this one thing, don't look into your new direction until after you have changed leads. I think it's important that we don't make lead changes about changing direction. get them to change leads, then go the new direction.
That is a great idea and very much not taught.
Right. And I
So
think,
good.
and I've listened to coaches say, look the new direction. I understand a little where they're coming from, but what I find is when we move our eyes that new direction, our hand and our body and everything goes that new direction. Back up and think about loping a horse off. In a lope departure, the physics of it is, and think about a horse loping off from a standstill. They're going to rock back on their outside hock, lift up their inside shoulder to get that lead. So our weight, we should shift our weight where we want our horse's weight distributed. In that case of loping off in the left lead or changing in the left lead, they need to put their weight on their right hock. So I need to sit back on my right hip and their right hip to clear their left shoulder to lope off. And it's also the same when I change leads. So that's where my body should be going, is actually a little to the right to change to the left. But if I follow my eyes and just look left, my shoulders are going to go out over their left shoulder, and I'm not going to be sitting in the best spot to help them get that lead.
That is so incredibly true. And, such a big deal, I think, about this too, Shane, is that some of us are really good horse trainers, right? So we can train the horse to do things well, but we're not as good at instructing or coaching. And there is a big difference. Some people can do both, of which you've done during your career. So if you are coaching a rider to do these maneuvers, what are some different ways that you would get it done? Like, for example, in your lead change, would you always do it through the figure eight, or would you maybe do a long diagonal reverse to start? What are some of your thoughts there?
Very good question. And so we need to be able to, and none of this do we need to have a phobia about lead changes. We need to realize it's just about the pieces and the parts, and we need to practice the pieces and the parts. But the other thing about our horses, it doesn't matter if they're a rope horse that gets anticipatory in the box, or a barrel horse that's anticipatory at the gate, or our reining horses that are anticipatory to their stops or lead changes as well. We need to be careful about practicing something so repetitively that they get to where they're trying to outsmart us and do it before we ask. That becomes a problem on our reining horses to change right in the middle all the time. And it'll get them where they're leaning their shoulders sometimes. So I like to practice a lot more on a straight line, whether that straight line is going on a diagonal across the arena. And a lot of times I will have my students practice it at a diagonal because it will allow us to have a lot more room to move those shoulders over, get things straight and set up, and then change leads and continue on a straight line. One of the problems that we create when we're doing it from circle to circle is we're using too much of direction to get that lead change. The problem with that is they will change only in their shoulder and not bring their hips along, and then they'll drag that lead. So on that straight line, it allows us to almost work towards asking that hind lead to change first and the shoulders follow through. And I'll work that on a diagonal line as the easiest, and then eventually just draw on straight lines anywhere I want them in the arena. I want to look at lead changes as it's just another maneuver we do. And so I want to change leads a lot once I get that horse taught and knowing the body parts. I want to be able to lift up and change leads at any moment, at any time, and I typically want to do it on a straight line. So hopefully that answers your question.
Oh, very much so. And then in going back to helping the rider again, when they're trying to figure out these circles, whether they're the fast and large or whether they're the small and slow, do you have particular exercises that you start with? Like, do you do these? I know there's this, I'm just going to throw this out there. There's some reining trainers that are not they don't trot or jog ever. Right? They go right from walk into canter and lope. What are your opinions on that? And do you start some of these circles at the jog first? How do you do all those things?
I think one of the things is that a long time ago, we would hear reining trainers say that they didn't trot or jog because there used to be the saying that there's no trotting in reining. But then we invented pattern 11, so we no longer could say that. But also, I think our trainers and the styles that are out there and the methods that are out there today, we trot a lot and a whole lot more than we did 20 years ago. So yes, we trot a lot of circles. I use circles in trotting a lot to prepare for my spins because the cadence of a trot is the same cadence you have in a spin. working on the roundness of our circles. We also, as we teach our young horses, or if our horse doesn't know any better, we've got to do it from a walk to a trot to a lope. And we're going to do that working on our body control that we mentioned earlier. So we're definitely going to do our circles in every gear. One of the things as we're talking, that a tool that I use and teach is, imagine that when you're on the circle, you're loping on the face of a big clock. And so this helps in us making a round circle, and it helps in our communication and when we're instructing, so that everybody's on the same page as to where you're at in that circle. So if you're on the face of a big clock, you walk to the center of the arena like you would to go show, right there at your middle cone. That's going to be 12 o'clock. As you lope off into a right circle, you're going to lope to 3 and then 6 and then 9 and back to 12. And that's how you're going to put your eyes and your attention. Once your horse lopes off, you look at 3. As you start to approach 3, as you lope along, move your attention to 6 and so on around the clock. That allows you to do things like as you're training on your horse. If your horse leans in and misses 3, that's okay. Don't panic and feel like you've got to drag him over there. Just look up and try to hit 6. And that allows you, in your mental thinking as you go around there, realizing, where's my horse honestly pushing in and pushing out? Because you want to hit those points on the clock at the same spot every revolution. And if you're not able to do that, we need to work on our guidance, which tells us I'm not ready to do things like change leads or worry about my speed until I can get this guidance down. And a lot of times having that clock and imagining that you're loping on a clock helps you make it more round.
I think that not only is obviously so helpful for this maneuver and reining, but I just think it transfers over across so many disciplines to keep in mind. And I know I'm certainly taking notes for what I do next time I'm on my horse.
Good.
So,
good. And you're right, Sarah. All of these things is just horse training. I do, of course, we are biased being reiners, but you will hear a lot of people, whether they're in the cow horse or the cutting or English, they will talk about that. If they've tried reining at all, it's not the easiest discipline out there. You've got to pay attention, and there's a lot of finesse to this. But that's also why our sport is so popular. Most people that are in our industry are type A personalities. They're trying to find perfection. And so the challenge of getting these horses this finessed is what draws us to the sport. But it works in any equestrian sport or discipline.
It sure does. And I'll tell you, Shane, from my perspective, I am an instructor and I teach a lot of beginners and intermediates to ride. And I have also picked up so much. So thank you so much for all of your information today. It's been fabulous.
Well, good. I was hoping that maybe I might have a gem or two.
I'd say definitely more than 2.
Good.
So, Shane, I know people are going to want to connect with you and learn more about NRHA professionals and how to get connected with them after this. So what's the best way to reach you?
Of course, Facebook. We're on Facebook on Shane Brown Performance Horses. All my individual contact information is at Find a Pro on the NRHA website. We're working on trying to get those guys to where all of their information is on that website, and to where you can go and look up your area and find a trainer there. We have moved, and I don't think I've changed it on there, to Aubrey, but if you had something where in Aubrey and you wanted to find the trainers there, you could go to the NRHA website and find all the trainers in your area.
Awesome. And you know how much I love that tool too. So anyone, listening in today, again, that is NRHA.com/findapro. And like Shane said, you could pick the drop down and get as specific as a state or even a city to try and connect with someone in your area. So it's a great way to kind of dip your toe in.
Exactly.
Thank you, Shane, for being on the show today. We so appreciate it.
Thank you, Christy and Sarah. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for letting me be on.
So talking to Shane about those maneuvers was so interesting. And I really have to wrap myself out for a second because my very first reining lesson, I remember going into it thinking the circles will for sure be the easiest maneuver. Like, I grew up a barrel racer. I know how to do a circle. I mean, come on, that part has got to be easy. And it was so deceivingly difficult. And I kept looking down at the horse's neck and at my hands. And, I've been riding for 20 years, and the coach I was with just kept saying, the horse is still going to be up under you. You've got to look up, you got to look ahead. And so hearing Shane kind of break it down maneuver by maneuver and talking about it being a series of redirected lines, all I was thinking was my naive little self, not realizing how much finesse went into something that seemed so simple. And I just loved hearing him break it down like that. I can't wait to go try it.
Oh, I agree. He broke it down great. And I am so proud of you for ratting yourself out. I do it constantly. Because that's how we learn, right? You learn by like having a little failure moment and going, oh my gosh, I've got to get humble again. And what will horses do to us? Oh, they'll humble us every single time. And if you just want to change your discipline, change your breed, and oh boy, it's a whole new ball game.
A whole new ball game. And our professionals, to Shane's credit, he mentioned, how they help each other. But gosh, are they so willing to help new people? I mean, the amount of times I've called them for help outside of reining, even help inside reining for me to just understand things a little bit more. They are so brilliant at what they do and so great at explaining it, whether you know a lot or whether you know nothing. And so, I mean, they are just such a great connection to have.
Completely agree. So anyone listening, again, you can find a pro at NRHA.com, and then it's actually under Find a Pro. So it'd be great to have you go there and check it out. There's some great people pretty much all around the US, Canada, and internationally.
Absolutely. I am thrilled to introduce our next guest on the podcast today. We are going to be here with Drake Johnson. He competed in the Appaloosa circuit as a youth and earned his associate's degree in horse management from Lamar Community College. He opened up his own training business in Ray, Colorado, and specializes in reining, working cow horse, and versatility ranch horse. He has coached NRHA Derby and Futurity winners, finalists, High Point and AQHA Youth, American Quarter Horse Youth Association World Show Top 10 contenders. And not only has he done all of that, but he has his judges card with NRHA. He's a steward. And he sits on our board of directors and has served multiple committees, including the judges, stewards, and aged event committee. Drake, thank you so much for joining us, especially on such a big day, getting your little girl registered for kindergarten classes. That's pretty major. So the fact you made time for us today, we are so excited to have you with us.
That's awesome. Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
So Drake, I chose the photo to use that you will see once this is put on the Horses in the Morning page and on our page on NRHA.com of you and I at the freestyle that you did at the Derby. Could you go ahead and just chat a little bit more about that class and why you chose the song and the costume that you did?
Well, I like all kinds of music. I listen to all kinds of music, and I've done that one before. It's Frank Sinatra, New York, New York, and it really fits. It has it has some changes of pace and speed. It's entertaining, and I think even the young people today could have heard that song. So it kind of reaches out to a little bit of all the age groups, and then whenever I have a real particular horse that has a real good movement and flows with the timing and the rhythm with the music. And, it's just a real fun one. I mean, I always have liked, Frank Sinatra, and I mean, who doesn't? So, costume, just kind of, being like Frank, it's just has always been a fun, real entertaining one and really fairly easy to do because it's got a lot of changes and it's extremely entertaining.
It was extremely entertaining, and I love freestyle. Freestyle is what first drew me to kind of loving the reining sport, so it was a joy to see you do it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.
So, Drake, today's show is really specifically focused on the pieces of a reining pattern that include the circles and the lead change. So as a judge, you've sat in the chair at the AQHA World Show, at Congress, at all these really large major events. When you're in that chair, what are things you're looking for in a good, fast, and slow circle during a reining pattern?
Well, first of all, I always try to, whenever you judge an inning maneuver, you always kind of want to have a general in mind, and that's, that's kind of what our judging is based on, and everybody can find that in the rules for judging, and it talks about, the correctness of the pattern, to guide the horse willingly and dictated to completely. We really look at pattern placement, the symmetry of the size of the circle, hitting the middle, the center of the arena. And then the degree of difficulty goes up based on, speed, authority, and is it pleasing to watch? And so, really the first thing, there's several parts to the circle. And if you were to talk about circles and then the lead change, the first thing I watch is how, if they're entering the arena, coming in the arena, walking to the center, that's all part of that first maneuver. And then we talk about things being correct, good, very good, and great. That would be, 0 plus half plus 1 to plus 1.5. And then the other way, poor, very poor, extremely poor. So when that first one walks to the middle and then how they execute that lead departure, that's kind of the first thing I check that box in my mind. Was it correct, good, or, give that a value. And then that first circle, based on how well they, execute the circle, whether it's, let's say it's a small, slow, or let's say it's a large, fast to start with. And, you want to see that the upward transition be smooth. You want to see obviously the circle being correct. You want to see how willingly and dictated to completely that horse is, the balance of the horse, the way of going of the horse, and his, expression. That all plays a part into that first circle. So after they run that first circle and that speed, was the speed average? Was it, good, very good? So after that first circle, in my mind, I'll give that a score. And then we say the first lead departure was just average or correct. And then let's say that first circle, that's good. So now we have an average and then good, meaning plus half. And then let's say on the second fast circle, they kind of duck in, or the horse, kind of sticks his nose to the outside, and if there's resistance when he guides him back in, or maybe he leans to the middle. That's just given a description of maybe what could happen. Then I would say that second circle is a poor. Okay, so now we have, average on the lead departure, the walk in the lead departure, good on the first circle, or poor on the second circle. And let's say the downward transition, the slow downward transition is a little early, not too center. And, then the horse just kind of goes around, kind of average through the small. And then I'll give that a score. We'll say average. And then let's say the lead departure or the lead change was good. So in your mind as a judge, you have to weigh about all those parts. And the circles take really a kind of a long time. So you have to be really careful not to just see one negative in one place, and then that's what that whole, all those circles and changes and lead departure warrant. You can't do that. So as I just talked you through one, we said the lead departure and the walk to the middle was average. And we said the first circle was good, so that we're going to have a plus half there. And then the second circle is poor. We lost some guide. We had some resistance, so that we'd say that's minus half. And then the third circle is average, but then we had a good, good change of lead. So when you take all that and you weigh that all together, you come up with your score of 0, if that makes sense, back to average, because you had 2 poors and 2 goods and 2 averages in that. So then it kind of brings you back to, that's how you come up with the score that you have. And, pattern placement is very, very important. It plays into that as far as when they, did they just walk a few steps and lope off, and then hitting the middle. We allow the horse to have like a stride before direct center and after direct center. That's kind of that box. So we allow the lead change and walk forward and then lope off in somewhere in that general area. 2 things I see a lot of mistakes. People they run that first big fast circle and then they start slowing down way before the center. As we teach it, we'd like to see those horses, it calls for it all the way to the center. Then they slow down. If they take a couple strides to come to where that pace they want, then that's credit earning. So it's always good to, be correct on your circles, and hit the center, which would be your middle cone. We do allow a horse width either side of that center because we have the allowance of the balk prior direct center forward and behind it. And so we also have kind of a horse width each side of that direct middle cone as you're sitting there. So I don't know. That's kind of a little general basic description of a circle.
I think that's great. And I think what's so cool for those listening who are competitors already in reining is the way you broke that down. Even if things aren't exactly going how you hoped in part of that circle, the way you describe it so broken down, there's certainly no reason to give up or feel discouraged if there's a piece that's a little off, because there's certainly other pieces where you can make up those points, even in that one maneuver.
Correct. We weigh the maneuver, the whole thing. And I think a lot of times, you'll see somebody make a mistake and then you can just see them just be deflated and they quit showing, You'll see some, riders on particular patterns that like a pattern 8 where you run fast, small, slow, and big fast. You'll see them be a little conservative on the first circle, because they don't know if the horse is going to come back, and then they do. And then they'll run that third, the big circle after the small, real aggressive, so that comes to mind. You can see that, even at a major, and those guys they're playing up the good points, they're playing down their bad point, or what the horse is going to listen to. And so, you just have to keep moving forward and being correct. And so hopefully that kind of describes that a little bit.
I think it was great, Drake. And I'll tell you, this is so good to have the judge's perspective. But with you, we get two things because you also are a trainer. So I want to kind of jump into what tips do you have? As I know everyone teaches things a little bit differently, to give those that are listening right now some tips to work on these maneuvers with their own horses at home. What are some ideas that you like to instill in your own students?
Well, what I like to instill in my students is I kind of go over that when they run those circles. I'm a big proponent of, because judging, I know that's where your score gets up and down, is, take your time, make sure you're correct on your lead departure. Practice those things at home where you can, your horse can get his feet moving. If you need to kind of bridle up or help him, do that, but just practice that anywhere in a circle, just when you're walking and letting them catch their air. Put your legs on, set them up, clear the shoulder, whatever you do to get prepared to execute that lead departure. Because I think people think they just go to the middle and then put their leg on and things aren't right, and then they just panic and go, and then wrong lead or whatever happens. So you can practice that, and I have my students do that. When they're walking around. After they're kind of, when they're warming up, getting ready to show, they check that, setting that horse up for the lead departure. And you don't have to do it in the middle. You just do it as you're walking, putting your legs on, set him up, soften him, then let that horse relax him. So he's not thinking every time you go to set him up, he's got to do it. And then, before I send him in, and I just hound on this all the time, all the way to the middle to slow down, all the way to the middle to change leads. Because these horses, as they start to get shown, if you back off early, we practice at home running to the middle, and then they slow down, they keep their hawk engaged, they know they're still going on that circle. But a lot of times, if you decelerate early, that horse pops out of lead, he anticipates going the other way and changes leads. So that's another kind of verbiage in my mind, and I have my riders think, on their downward transitions, that they're always to the middle, and same thing with that lead change. Those horses, after they get shown, they anticipate that middle quite a bit. So I think that's probably one of the bigger things to just focus on is when you're circling, keep thinking like you're going to look 10 more circles. And when it's time to slow down, stop, or change, just do it right then. And then the horse doesn't know what's coming. So those are some big things, I see, from a judge's standpoint, and the coaching standpoint. A lot of times when I sit in chair 5, which is behind the rider, or even on either way, you can see when somebody be running a really fast circle and they back off and that horse really shuts down, but they're still an eighth from the center. I can still see kind of the side of the horse, not, the horse approaching in that box in the middle. And then they lay kind of some tracks and then they keep loping. Well, that's a great downward speed transition, but it's in a terrible location. So it's really hard you kind of lose that credit that you could have. And so those will probably be the two biggest tips that I could help people to improve their circles is, go slowly on your upward transition, work on a nice, good, I think a downward transition is being just meltdown. Don't brace and be abrupt and try to make it happen. Because if it doesn't happen right away, a lot of times people panic and want to pull, and then the horse leans into the bridle, and then you don't get anything. Just meltdown. Give that horse a chance, because you've been training on him to listen to your body position and your downward transition. And a lot of times they'll really just respond to that. But when you brace and force something, a horse has a tendency to kind of stiffen up against it.
So true. And these details, Drake, are so good. And I love that you're doing it from the perspective of not only a trainer and a coach, but also as the judge, because I think that that's key, right? Being able to pay attention to all of that and know that that's your end goal if you're planning on showing. So what the different perspectives, and I love how you brought up the chair. I think that that's really important. Can you explain that to our listeners, what the different chairs are in for the reining? Because I don't think everyone will know exactly what that means.
Well, like at a major event where we have 5 chair positions, you would have one on as you're entering the arena on your left-hand side of the arena between the middle and the first cone. And then the second chair is the one directly in the middle cone. And then third would be the third one up on your left side. And then 4 is on the right side, on the other side of the arena. And then 5 is back toward the gate. And, a lot of times that, when people evaluate their scores, or, I've been on reviews that, working on the judges committee, I mean, there is, when I sit in chair 1 or 4, whatever chair I am, I have to judge within that perspective all day long. That's where I'm at, and that's where I can see. So sometimes you'll see some nuances that or some judges at their perspective can only see some certain things. Like if the guy directly in the middle, sometimes on that downward transition, and we work really hard to look through the legs and try to see the back legs, but sometimes the guy in 1 and 3 and 4 and 5 can actually see that horse maybe come in and come out of lead, directly, where that guy's one position, he couldn't see that. Well, you look at your scores, you're like, oh, well, this guy liked me, this guy, that's got nothing to do with it. It's just, there's a spot there that he could not see that. A lot of times I've done the Derby the last couple of years, in 4 and 5, and you really, the downward transition is pretty self-evident because we're from the back behind. We can see that. Where if you take and you go sit in the other chair on the other side, you have a different perspective of that, what that is coming down there. So the judges all are trained in all those different chair positions, and they judge within that spot all day long, and then they give a good quality evaluation of your maneuver. But I think as I could say to the exhibitors and our competitors and our fans, that it does, you go sit in all 5 different of those chairs, it's a little different look, but you're still judging the same reining, and so that's the beauty of it.
Absolutely. And I always think it's so funny, at our winter meeting, we'll do, we'll play those runs and have everyone judge it themselves. And, you guys always do such a great job at talking about those different perspectives. And not only that, but talking about how quickly you have to make a decision with the perspective you have. It's so easy when someone's watching that run after to see all the things, or you can discuss it out loud with your friends or debate it and discuss it for a while and then come up with a score. But you don't have that luxury when you're in that chair.
No. And, for myself, I try to, and all the judges are, you just got to make the call, evaluate it, give it a score, move on. Mm-hmm. really judging is not necessarily my opinion. I've been trained to evaluate the maneuver and score it in accordance with our, with our industry standard, and nothing personal. You know what I mean? Just like I went through those things. If I can evaluate all those parts of that circle and give it a score and move on, I forget about it. And you could be negative and poor on one side, and if you kick it over here on this side, I pay it. So if you really, the beauty of the system is that it's one maneuver at a time. And all I am is a reporter, reporting what I see and what you're doing each maneuver. And I just forget about it after that. I don't care what my end score is or this or that. I think truly the best evaluation of the reining horse is just one maneuver at a time. And then you can be comfortable with when there's good stuff, you pay it. When it's negative, you give it that score. And then how it shakes out at the end, well, if there's, you got two tied at a 75, well, there can be all kinds of different ways to come with it. I didn't tie them. You know what I mean? Right. It's not my judge. I'm not sitting there scoring going, well, out of 130 rounds, I'm going, hey, I'm kind of like so-and-so better and this and that. And I know he's here and there. You will mess up you cannot do it. You just need to be a reporter of whatever it is. And so when, just another little, things that I guess fans or exhibitors need to know is like, you'll see scores like, you could see a score of 70 and a 72 and maybe, 70 and a half or something like that. And you're going, oh, this guy didn't like me. This guy loves me. I've heard this stuff for years, and I try to educate them in the fact that there's sometimes on a maneuver, there's a lot of, it's not here. And then there's okay here. And you might get the benefit of the doubt. There's two places that maneuver could be scored. You're on the bubble. It's either a 0 or maybe a half. Okay, well, one judge zeros it, and then one judge plus halves it. You're kind of in the middle. You're a tweener. Well, you do that in 4 maneuvers in a reining pattern. One's a guy's a 2, one guy's a 70. And they're both right. So what I try to tell exhibitors, you got to be better, because you've got to make it an easy call. Sure. So when you see the scores come up, I remember Vegas a few years ago, our first horse out around 75. I mean, it was a great reining. Judge 1, 75. Judge 2, 75. Judge 3, 75. Well, why are they all just 75? Because they were easy calls for all of us to make. You see what I mean? Absolutely. They were easy 0, easy 1. It wasn't, it could be 2 places. It could be a 0 minus half or 0 or plus half, whichever. There's 2 places it can be. When you do that on a few maneuvers, it can be a little different. And that's okay, because if you average them and draw it down the middle, that's pretty much a real good description of what you just did. So if you want to get that score and you don't want to get the benefit of the doubt, or, you're on the fence on one maneuver, you just got to go be better. You just got to make it an easy call for the judges. So, well, I don't know if that explains that, but.
Absolutely. I think it's a great perspective and just great insight, like Christy mentioned earlier, from multiple perspectives, from a training side and from a judge's side. And I know people are going to want to figure out how to get in contact with you after this recording and after they listen to this podcast. We've already mentioned earlier on the podcast that they can visit NRHA.com/findapro to find different professionals in their area. But where can they get directly in contact with you, Drake?
Well, I have a website. It's DrakeJohnsonHorses.com. Obviously I'm Facebook, Instagram under Drake Johnson Performance Horses. I'm on the judges list and obviously NRHA Find a Pro. So, there's on the internet, you can type it in, you can find it. So, be more than happy to help, anybody, and whether you're in our region or not, or need the help here, but I have quite a bit of network of friends and things throughout the country that, we can hook you up with somebody in their area and give you some recommendations that, help them get some help as far as, you got to have a coach, you got to have somebody with your eyes on. All of us professionals, we ride with each other. We're always asking, what did that look like? Even your help, you have to have sometimes you can't see the trees through the forest, and getting help that's what's so great about the industry today. All the young and upcoming guys and the trainers over the years have learned and interned and apprenticed and were assistants, that's where they've kind of grown through the ranks to become the quality that they are. So and I haven't ever been anywhere and nobody's like, no, I'm not going to help you. You know what I mean? Either affiliate shows or whatever, there's always somebody there. Don't, feel free to ask. And there's never a dumb question,
It's an awesome community.
If you don't ask that, that's probably the dumb question. You know what I mean? Just ask, and everybody's, it's such a good community to help, progress your skills. And if you're confused or don't understand, I have lots of guys that, hey, will you look at my run? You go, let's go over it, so.
Well, Drake, thank you. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I think you gave such a wonderful perspective, and it's going to be just great for everyone listening. So thank you again.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, I really enjoyed that. What a unique concept to have him come on and even dive into like the specifics on the chair position. I don't know if people think about that. And I loved that perspective of him because he is a judge and he sat in every chair. I thought that was really neat.
Yes, me too. And it's so cool because, it's fun if you know nothing about reining to learn about things like that. But also, even our top level professionals, Drake talks all the time about how the guys that are out there and improving are the ones that are spending time, paying attention to stuff like that and looking at the handbook and talking to judges and looking at a run with them. And so I just think that's such a cool concept to just be a forever learner. I just love that.
Me too. And for everyone listening, you can find more about our National Reining Horse Association monthly edition of Horses in the Morning through the Equine Network by just visiting your favorite podcast store. And you can just download via a Droid or also via Apple. So easy to find. And Sarah, explain a little bit more about how they can find us on NRHA.
Absolutely. So you can find NRHA on Facebook, Instagram, NRHA.com, specifically NRHA.com/fan if you're just wanting to know more about the very basics of reining. Or if you're a little bit past that and you've learned the basics and you're wanting to get connected with a trainer like the ones we've talked about today, again, you can visit NRHA.com/findapro. And you can sort those trainers by state, by city, by skill level, and then you can go out and try reining for yourself. And we hope that you do, and we hope that we talk to you next time we're on this podcast. But until then, go and have the slide of your life.